Hi, my name is Candace Waller, and I'm talking about my first children's picture book, Frankie and the Peanut Butter and Jelly Fiasco, with Jewel from So Booking Cool. So happy to be here. Tune into her show.
It's so motherfucking cool to listen to So Booking Cool.
Welcome to So Booking Cool, it's Jewel B. Today's guest uses her passion for writing and book marketing as a gateway to connect with others. She is a journalist who has written more than 300 articles, including for Black Enterprise, as well as several original Christian romance novels. She has publicized titles by literary giants like Bishop T.D. Jakes and James Patterson. She met her illustrator, Abigail Khan, at the nonprofit dance school that she runs, Why We Dance, which has existed for more than 15 years. Her debut children's book, Frankie and the Peanut Butter and Jelly Fiasco, is written in both English and Spanish. Here with us today, she is Candace Waller.
Hi, how you doing? Thank you so much for the opportunity, Jewel.
Hi, Candace. You're very welcome. We're happy to have you here and get to talk to you about this lovely book that you have brought into the world.
Well,
Okay.
thank you.
Yes. So first of all, what does being an author mean to you?
I love writing. I've always loved writing, so I like it in various forms. I started off as print, when we had newspapers, your hands got dirty, and then I went online. So, I just like to write and like to share information. I do it for entertainment and information. That's what it means to me.
Do you remember any works that you found you're like, wow, this is really informative and this is really entertaining?
I've been reading it's Victoria Christopher Murray has a new book. I can't wait to read it. But she had a book called The Personal Librarian. She co-wrote that book and my eyes were popping open because it was based on a true story about this black lady she was passing and
Mhm.
her work in a library. So like I love things like that where I love to have find information. And she has a new book coming out. I can't wait to look at it and see it. I think it's called Harlem Rhapsody. Have you heard of it?
That does sound familiar, yes.
Yeah, and I like that. And also I love Tamron Hall. I love her show. And she's got a new children book called Honey Harlem.
Yes.
And I can't wait to read that one. I just came out with about her little son and how he learns different things about Harlem. So like I like books that kind of fiction but also have something real to them too. Like I feel like I learn.
No, absolutely. Yeah, like the realism of it all, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And still, I guess, using your imagination. But speaking of imagination, what was your relationship with books when you were a child?
My mother always took us to the library, so that's how it started. And we had the nursery rhymes, Jack and Jill, and all those kind of things. But let me tell you, when I read books like that, I very rarely saw a black character. So a lot of the nursery rhymes were like white characters. And then I like Disney. And it's Tiana is kind of fairly recent, but all the characters were like white characters. Nothing wrong with that, but it wasn't a lot of diversity in it. I loved the old time classics, Bernstein Bear and Tommy DiPiola and Maurice Sendak, but they weren't black character great stories, but they didn't really have characters that kind of look like me.
Do you recall the first book that you did come across where you said, finally, there's representation?
It's fairly recent because it's been like an explosion of these type of books that I've been looking at, but it like I kind of went to so I was kind of older. It had a different impact because when you're a kid looking at a book is different than when you're an adult. So when I was a kid, I don't recall any that really had black characters. And only when I was older, looking at different writers, that I saw myself kind of represented. And I used to work in a library. I have a library background, so I was a children's library assistant. So I would help with the children's program. So I saw a lot of books. I did not see. I can't remember a black book that I saw growing up, but like a black, picture book.
Right. Mm. So, do you think as a child you were noticing that, wow, none of these, I like these books, these are great stories, but none of these characters look like me? Do you think you noticed that, or was it when you started to get a little older? Or how old would you say you noticed that?
I know, you kids notice. They notice things very young. I noticed it. We don't necessarily understand what we see. Because I remember reading books like, I know I was gravitating toward books that were like animals because I really love animals. And with animals, you don't really necessarily need to see people that look like you. But even on television shows, when we were kids, like there was never really black children on the show except for the Cosby Show. They had a multiracial like Rudy had Peter, a little blonde little white boy, and he was always like look staring, and he was always staring. But you didn't see a lot of little black characters. None of the other shows did they have black friends, family ties, and I mean, the other shows they really didn't have. I think Silver Spoons had one, but it wasn't common. It wasn't common to see us. So I kind of grew up feeling like, wow, we're not really present.
Do you think that that's why you decided to become an author at all?
Well, I wanted to have tell the story from a different lens. I wanted to have a different perspective because if you look at journalism, it's very there are not many people of color and fewer black people. And then when you look at people in positions of power, like I have a degree from New York University, and when all my professors, almost all of them were white, they were all big heads of big publishing companies. When I went to publishing companies, very rarely did I see a black face. I remember Linda Duggins, she was with us, and she was a publicist, and she was one of the few. But and Karen Thomas, but it wasn't like you didn't see a lot of a representation, and that impacts information. I remember when I did my thesis, and the lady said she didn't understand because I'm doing it from a different perspective. So I'm like, no, black people do this. I did mine on an Indian magazine. She said, well, Indian people don't do. I said, yes, they do. We do. You just don't see it, but we're still doing everything everyone else does. It's just not being seen.
Can you share what some of those things were that she thought we didn't do?
It was like crazy things. Like she was no offense against her, she was from the Midwest. I don't think she ever really dealt with a lot of people of color before. So like I wanted to, like I was telling you, you have to do demographics when you do a magazine. You have to know everything about them, like the type of car they drive, food they eat, and stuff like that. And she was just like, I'm like, no, the research shows this, and I know Indian people, and I'm a woman of color. I'm black, so of course we do these things. Her whole thing was skewed, and she wasn't going to let me do my project. But I said, look, they're a multi. They have a lot of money in this neighborhood. This magazine, if launched, will make us money.
Got it.
So it was like that.
Wow. So, how did you get started, like on your path? Like, did it start with marketing? Did it start with journalism?
It started with journalism. I used to write a lot when I was a kid. I observed stuff, and that's journalism. Like journalism, you're writing what you see, and I did that. So when I was in high school, I was in the part of the paper, and I also did videos. I love doing videos. I did one of my most popular one was I did prom and had girls dressed up. I did a video on that, and then I wrote different articles. I also wrote a lot of Black history articles, and it was really. I got in trouble. I remember I was a senior, and she was like, "You couldn't have written that article. That article was too good. You couldn't have written it, so you must have copied it." That's what she said. And I was like, because she didn't see it like this kind of things happens. And, I talk about it and it's like nonchalant. But when I was going through it, I was really sad. And then she finally apologized. She said, no, I gave her all my sources. Here's what I took. She said, no, you wrote that. Because I was passionate about it. You write the best when you feel it, when you love it. That's when you see that you have to believe in a story. So if I'm writing about Dr. King and what he did, that impacted me personally as a kid because my mother marched with Dr. King, and then with all the things he did help me. So like I wrote it from like a very like almost like I knew him because I felt like all the stuff he did was so impactful. But she felt like, how this girl write that? You know what I mean? That's how she kind of and she actually said it. I was just like horrified. But it is what it is.
So, so she did apologize.
She did come back because I gave her all my sources.
Yeah.
Because I said it was a big thing. I had a friend on the paper, and he was an Asian guy, and I didn't go to when they did layout. He said, Candace, he came back from layout. He said, there's a problem. They don't want to publish it. They don't believe you could have written something like that. And I was like, oh, I wrote all the time. I have journals. I wrote all the time. Whatever you do the most of, you're the best at. If you do it all, if you bounce a ball all the time, you're going to be best at that. If you read all the time and you write all the time, you'll be best at that. So I wrote all the time. So I was always like tweaking stuff and going back and stuff. So she didn't really think that I was writing the stuff that I was writing. It
So,
is what it is.
so from that moment on, did you still have to interact with her? And what did that dynamic turn into, like once she apologized?
I still interacted with her because she was the head of the paper. So I was like, and I wrote other stuff. Like I wrote a lot of like stuff about like, you know, Black issues. I was very interested in that because, we take it for granted that we know so much more about Black history. But when I was in school, it was like very, very European centered. So we didn't really learn about ourselves. And I had an uncle, I loved him. His name is Abdul, and he's been gone on to glory since 2018. I love that man. And he always would give me black books. So my mind was hungry. And I said, if I want to learn this stuff, why not share with other people? And they did want to learn it. So that's how it started. And he always encouraged me. He said, you could do it. You could do it.
Did you get to tell him about this moment with the head of the paper not believing that?
Oh yes, we talked about stuff, and he kind of guided me through stuff. He was like, things happen. You're just gonna. It's this is because they're in a power position. A lot of these people are in a power position, so they don't feel that you can do a lot of things. You're gonna just have to show them. Like I wasn't confrontational. Like I didn't go whatever, but I'm like, no, I wrote this. This is what I want. This is what I feel, and that's it. And I continue to write all the time.
And so at the paper, did anyone ever question your writing ever again?
Oh no, one thing they were like, no, no, because I mean, like like I said, I wrote all the time. They saw me writing all the time, and we did have an issue with someone else on the paper who they didn't do interviews and stuff. But I did a lot of work. I was always interviewing people. I was that crazy kid. I chased everyone with a camera. I was notorious at college. Some of these guys, I gave them heart attacks because I would follow them and try to get articles. I filmed everything. To this day, people saying, "Oh, we want your footage because you filmed everything." Like I at school, Amiri Baraka was at school, and I filmed him. I saw him, and I was like, "Oh, I want to talk to you." And he wrote all these stuff, and he's a famous poet and stuff. And I was like, "I need to talk to you." And he gave me an interview. That's because I was pushy. Got to be a little pushy for journalists, right?
Yes. My goodness. There's plenty to talk about with you, Candace. Wow. And you have gone on to write over 300 articles.
Yes, I write a lot of things that go happen because a lot of news happens. And I write about stuff like people want to know what's going on, who did this, whatever. And that becomes a record. We're talking about, they had an exhibit in Morristown with Frederick Douglass. I didn't know Frederick Douglass came to Morristown. And somebody wrote in the paper, they didn't write a lot. They wrote Frederick Douglass was here, and it was like two sentences. But the fact that it was documented in a paper, that gave credibility. Somebody noticed he was here and wrote an article. When you write articles, that I could be long dead and gone, and people could go back to that article and say somebody recorded that. That's what happened. It becomes a part of our history, it becomes a record.
So you're very much a multimedia journalist.
Yeah, I want to get better with like video because when I started out, it was very, very linear. And now they have all this digital stuff. And what I've learned is that you gotta kind of have to learn by yourself because when you go to school, they teach you to work for someone else. But I really want to be kind of more entrepreneurial. So you have to take courses that teach you how to run things yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so because you are entrepreneurial, you have that spirit. So you know what your vision is for
Mhm.
photography and filming, right?
Yeah.
Have the freedom is that what you're speaking to?
Yes, I mean, I try. I mean, I'm not. I just take take the picture or interview people when I see them. So you get what you get. Like sometimes it's too loud or whatever because you're right there in the moment. You're recording it and it becomes part of our history. So I think it's very important that you know everyone knows their histories, particularly Black people, because it's been hidden for so long. So we really have to make an effort to learn who we are, go to museums, read books, encourage our children very young, expose them to images that look like them. It's very important for their development.
So journalism, public
Mhm.
relations, marketing, right? You've just
Yeah,
different worlds.
what happened is when I went to NYU, I was a publicist. I was an associate publicist. So that means that I work with people with their promoting their books. So I work with Bishop Jakes and James Patterson and people like that. They're a big name. So like I only dealt with their books though, not their whole brand. Because they're huge. It's like I did his book and I would promote it and help them get, sales and get it to the right people. And that's how I start. That's how the promotion came about. And then when I started writing for online, you got to promote those articles. It's not like a newspaper. Like online, I tell everyone I wrote an article and try to get people to read it because I want to get more coverage. I want to get more assignments. So it's a very different way than being a strictly print journalist that I started out being.
Wow. Yeah, you named some literary giants there.
Oh yeah, it was interesting to work on their stuff, how they come together.
What would you say was some of the most interesting things about what you saw?
Well, just how really hard it is, and how they think. They think of all kind of angles. Like they're not. It's not like, oh, I wrote a book and they sit on it. They're like, no, it's going to be this. They're always making deals and stuff like that. And I do that with my stuff right now. People say, well, why are you doing that? I said, well, I have to ask people. You may not give me an interview, but if I don't ask, I'm definitely not going to get it. But if I ask, you may say yes. You may say no, but maybe I can do this. You don't know what someone's going to say, so you have to put it out there. You have to try a lot of different things.
How did all of that inform when you decided to write your own material, own books?
I self-publish, so I you put on many hats. It's like you're first the writer hat, and you're your marketing hat, and then you're doing this, you're doing designing ads or whatever. So it really informs everything because you there's a lot of books being published. What makes my book? People are going to notice it over all the other books that are published.
How did you know that you wanted to write about romance and love?
I mean, I love reading about romance and love. Maybe I might write mysteries. I like those too, but I don't know. I think romance and love just makes the world go round. It just makes you happier. Most people are looking for love, even if they can't find it. They're looking for somebody or something to love, right? And I like it I wrote Christian romances because I didn't want to write about all the physical acts. We have so much of that. I wanted to write about the connection, like what makes people want to be together and how's that happen. It's that's how I saw it. So it's kind of harder because if you're not writing about the physical aspect so much, you're writing about how people connect. It's harder, but that's something that I always wanted to write about, and that's what I do write about when I write love stories.
So when you're talking about the connection, it's tell us more about that, Candace, and
The
how you.
connection between people, because people like you see on TV and it's very physical, but love is a connection first. Like the strongest love stories were people that are friends that have something in common that are willing to build together,
Mhm.
and that's the connection I'm talking about. Because physical, that can happen or not happen anytime during a marriage, but when you have that friendship and the support and you want to be with someone and help them and they help you and you have history together, that's what brings people together. That's the story.
Okay, I love that Christian romance. So
Mhm.
when you're and before, of course, we talk about your lovely children's book debut, but do you have a favorite time of day that you like to write? Do you have a favorite place that you like to write? Um, and do you have a certain amount of time that you like to spend writing? Just some writerly things.
Okay, so basically how it works is that I like to work on my book either writing or editing at least 45 minutes to an hour a day. So that could be editing stuff, it could be writing stuff depending on what I'm doing. And I tend to work from outlines. I like to write not I'm not someone that's married to an outline, but I like to have some direction. I also like to have like I do biographical sketches so I know what this character is. I also always know what I want to convey in the story. Why am I writing the story? Why do I want you to read the story? Because if I can talk about that, it makes it more authentic. Like I'm writing because I want to talk about love and how these people connect and what are things, the issues they go through. And then that's what draws me to write. I don't just write because I can't tell you why the story's there. To me, that's important. That's how I do it. I find that with writing, I tend to do it like earlier or maybe sometimes at night because I work. So I kind of carve time out that way. And it's consistency. People think you got to write 5,000 words. No, but if you write a page a day, you'll have a book in a year. It's the consistency of it, the organization of it that makes it happen.
Can you write with music on?
I do like music. I like classical sometimes. I like jazz sometimes. Sometimes I listen to hip hop, depending on what I'm writing about.
Ooh, okay. So when writing the Christian romances, for example, what might you be listening to?
I like a lot of classical and sometimes I like a lot of hip hop because people think that Christian romances are just like these dry things, but people who are Christians have done everything, everything under the sun. And then, they do things they shouldn't, they fall down. So that's the story. And sometimes it's even more scandalous because if they're like, I'm working on this book and the new book I'm working on, and the guy is in the church. So when things kind of break down there, it becomes like shocking to people, as if people in the church are immune to what goes on. They're not. They're not.
What? Like what?
Anything that happens, infidelity, drug use, mental illness, all that goes on in the church. We believe in God, and we that's how we get redeemed. But we're not immune to getting those issues, sickness, death. Mm-hmm.
So when you're not getting graphic, right, in the Christian romance novels, is the understanding that these characters who are in love with each other, that they are being intimate, but that's not the focus. Like they're being intimate, but it's not going to be written about because there's more to talk about.
Um, I don't know. I mean, the ones I've written, like the character I wrote, Nicole, she came out of a really bad marriage, so she really wants a connection. She's not trying to get. She had all the intimacy with this man, and that didn't go anywhere. She wants somebody that really wants to kind of get her. So there really isn't that much of too much physical, like sexual thing, because I mean, even in my own personal dating, like, physical can skew a lot of things. Like you only want to know about this person, and I don't want to be tainted. I want to know certain things. And I think a lot of times we're like, oh, well, he's so no. I want to know certain things. How you handle money, how you have anger, how you treat your family. You need to know this stuff with like no rose-colored glasses. I want to see it. And so that's what I write about.
When it comes to building, because you talked about the organizational structure of books, but what about your structure when it comes to creating your characters? What can you tell us about that?
Well, I like I said, I do character sketches.
Right, you didn't.
So I know who she is and what she's trying. I know what she's trying to accomplish. Like in the book, what goes around comes around. I talk about this character, and she really wants to kind of. She's getting a divorce, but she really always wanted to sing, but she has crazy, crazy stage fright that stops her. So that's really her goal. And then you meet people a lot of times when you're not really looking for them. So she meets a man she knew, a younger man that she knew that she kind of wished he was the one that got away. Like she wished she had pursued it, but didn't pursue it. And so her focus is like really trying to get her life back in order because she kind of got out of a mess. So there's like hiccups there because people don't ever go away, especially in relationships. I don't know if you noticed this, but a man can say, I don't want to be with you. Fine. As soon as you start working on something else and doing your thing, here he comes. Wait, did I get rid of you? You're like a bad headache. Get away. And this is what happens. He's coming in messing up stuff and he's embarrassing her. And it's a big thing. And, she just wants to move on. But he won't let her.
Wow, that sounds very interesting. Very interesting, very relatable. Speaking of that, how did Frankie and the Peanut Butter and Jelly Fiasco, your first children's book, how did that come into your life?
It was really funny because I used to be a caretaker for a little boy, and he was like 4, and I was like, well, what can I do with him? So I would like cook with him, and I said one to him one day, I want you to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with me, because he liked peanut butter and jelly. So this thing, let me tell you, to get a kid to do it by themselves, he's like, I want to do it myself. So I did my sandwich, but he had it everywhere. It was on his face, it was on the floor. It was just like, but he really wanted to try. So when a kid is learning, you have to be positive because they have to try. They're gonna mess up. And so he made the sandwich. He was so proud of it. And we ate the sandwich. And his dog got that sandwich. I don't know how the dog got the sandwich. It was terrible. So the dog wouldn't get the sandwich back. It was terrible. He was screaming. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a horrible memory. I've given him nightmares. So I gave him my sandwich. And so then we knew to keep that dog away from our stuff. He had 2 dogs. Those dogs would fight over food. They would be waiting. Little dogs and sniffing. Because I would make him steak and chicken and all kind of stuff. I'd feed him well. And they'd be like, and I'd be like, we got to get these dogs out of here. Because we cannot have a repeat of him chewing up the sandwich.
What an interesting, what an interesting origin story. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
was reading
I love
Tamron
that.
Hall's story, and she was telling me that. I mean, not she telling me. I read in her article that she said she wrote the story based on her son. Experience with her son helped her. So I think that sometimes when we write these stuff, some of it is our own experience coming through. Yeah.
Do you think that it's important for books to have some experiences coming through, and why?
Yeah, because you want some authenticity. You want it to feel like it's believable. Fiction should sound like almost like it's real. You're changing it, it's different, but it should sound like it's real. That's the most interesting story. Like it's almost believable.
How did you go about getting the illustrator? Tell us about the illustrator,
Well,
Miss.
I have run a not for profit dance group called Wabi Dance. I've been doing it for like 15 years, and when I had one of these girls. She was a twin, and she was a dancer. Little kid, 5, 6 years old. I don't even know if she remembers that time. And she was in my class. So I was like, I had a professor. We had a class called Children's Publishing, and it was 5 classes. And at the end of the class, you got a book. Here's the book that came out of it. This is the first book. So I needed an illustrator. So I went on my town page and said, does anybody know of someone who can illustrate? Because I can write, but I do stick figures. I can't draw. And her mother said, her name said, yeah, Abigail can do it. And I'm like, Abigail put this together at 17 really fast. This
Wow.
is the first iteration of it because he printed us copies of the book and said, I'm going to print you a copy. And I said, oh, I really love the story. I want to take it further. So then we took it further. And so we did the second iteration, which is this one. This is from Amazon, but it still wasn't right. There were still issues with it. And I was like, oh gosh, she did a great job on the illustration, but you need someone who can do graphics and it's complicated. She's not a graphic designer, she's just a natural artist. So finally I got somebody who does graphics and we ended up with this. So it was like a journey. And it took me about 2 years to get it done because I didn't have the right tools. I think the next book I'm doing is going to be much faster because I know what to do now. Yeah.
Well, thank you, first of all. I love that you showed us that. I love it. And the
Mhm.
talent is there. The talent is within your writing, it's also within the artwork.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
she did good, and she did. And also, the book is available. I didn't tell people it's available in Spanish because also a lot of Latinos,
Okay.
especially Latinos that look like are browner, like
Mm.
everyone thinks Latin people are just very pale, but there's some Black Afro Latinas that could relate to this, and that's why I wanted to do it in Spanish so they also can see themselves. It's
Wow.
important for people to see ourselves.
What has been the feedback that you've gotten so far? The book, obviously, the good thing about books is that once they're out forever. But so it's
Mhm.
early, but yeah, tell us.
Well, I had activities at the library. The first activity I had them actually make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I gave everyone a little chef hat and they had on an apron. I gave them all aprons. They were so excited. They ran up to the table and they all sat down. I said, oh my gosh, they cannot sit at the table because they're going to be playing with this while I'm reading the story. So I said to them, I said, you guys have to sit down and listen because this story is going to tell you how to make a sandwich. And if you don't listen, you won't know. They had such a good time making those sandwiches. I mean, it was a little messy because jelly is sticky and peanut butter. I had one kid cry because he didn't want to leave. I don't know why he didn't want to leave. He wanted to stay, and then he wanted to paint. And I said, "You have to go home," but he didn't want to go home. But so I thought that was good. And then I read it again at another library, and we actually made a craft peanut butter. So we did shaving cream and flour and glue, and we made peanut butter and jelly out of that. And they had to spread it on the paper, and that was messy, but they had a good time too. So I think kids that are young, between the ages of 2 and like maybe 6, are really gonna like it because having a dog do that, dogs are just all over the place, and actually learning to do a new skill. I mean, I got pretty good feedback, and also I got some 5-star links on Amazon, so I
Yes.
was happy with, and then NABJ, I got a review there, and that was pretty good. So I was happy with reviews. Hopefully, it's still new yet. It's only been out like 6 weeks, so.
Yes. I love it. And it's well deserved, Some one of the things that I really liked about the book, aside from it like being, family oriented, is that the mom is not, like, no pun intended, she's not spoon feeding him, she's like encouraging him to think for himself as she's
Mhm,
asking him, how to make it, what the steps are. So I
mhm.
I, I love that. When it comes to writing children's book, and the answer might seem obvious to some people, but who do you most want to like the books? Is it the children's, the parent, guardians, or the teachers or librarians?
Well, we want the children to like it because the children like it, they'll influence everybody else. So it's geared for a child that they can see themselves. So if the kid likes it, kids don't have any money, but they influence a big market. So the fact that the kids liked it and they enjoyed making the sandwiches. One of the ladies wrote me and she said, "My daughter's been making sandwiches every day now. She loves to make sandwiches because she learned how to do it." And when I did, I had peanut butter, I had almond butter, sunflower butter, I had different kinds of jelly. So, you want to kind of stretch their palate. Like, do you like peanut butter and grape jelly? Do you like peach jelly? Do you like strawberry jelly? Do you like blueberry? I had all these jellies for them to try. Now, they all like strawberry. Everybody ate the strawberry. The peach, but you know what? Maybe next time they will. It was a different taste. So that's what you want. You want to kind of, in the next book, I'm going to have them do something else. I think when you have kids working with you, tasting stuff, because sometimes kids won't try stuff, but if they make it, they will. Look, you made it. Don't you want to taste a little bit to see if it's good? And then if he doesn't like it, okay, but maybe he might. You never know.
The best and worst advice that you think an author could get. What is it, Candace?
I think the best advice is just I do networking, work with other authors, you know, um, stick to your craft, regularly write and promote. And I think the worst advice, and this is what I got. Oh well, that's a long shot. It may not happen. You don't know what is a long shot. You have to try. I put the book out in Spanish. I don't know if that's going to be the Spanish audience is going to like this or not. But you have to try. If you wait for perfection, you'll never do it. Like you saw the first book I had. The first book, you can clearly see that it's definitely gotten better. But I had to try the first one before I got to see what was wrong with it. Don't be afraid of constructive criticism and don't be afraid to try. Because people were famous. Michael Jordan got cut from his basketball team. Prince, the great musician, he wasn't perfect the first time he touched the piano. We have to be willing to like not be perfect and just keep practicing until we get it. Like the Frankie, the first time he made that sandwich, it was looking crazy. But he kept going and tore the bread, kept going and did it again, and he made his sandwich. It took time. He didn't give up. You can't give up.
And on that note, Candace Waller, everyone.
Well,
Candace
thank you so much for inviting me to the show. And like I said, you can check me on my website, CandaceWaller.com. Frankie is on IG as Frankie the Series. And it's available on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and other retailers. So, let me know what you think.
Guys, definitely make sure that you check that out. You're not just writing wonderful books and how-tos, but you're writing books that's creating experiences. I just had to say that.
Yeah, it's important for kids, and kids remember little fun things like that. People think you have to spend a lot of money, but this sandwich takes you 20 minutes maybe to make. That's a memory that kid's gonna remember. Like, remember when mom and dad, my father helped me make lasagna for my class project. I still remember making it. Was it messy? Yes. Did I probably do crazy things? But I remember that we made lasagnas there. He showed me how to do it and put together. He took me to the store and get the ingredients. I still remember that decades later. My father's been dead, but I remember that memory we have. So when we do these things together, cooking and doing things, that's a lifetime positive memory of a child being with you. You're not on your phone. You're into them. You're looking at them. You're talking to them. You're listening. All those are very important things for early development for our children.
Absolutely. I just want to say, what do you think your father would say about this book?
I mean, he probably would have laughed about it because, like, my character kind of looks like my brother with the wild hair, And I see kids today with wild hair because sometimes they really don't want you to touch their hair. Like, it's not always easy with these kids. Like, I feel like parents feel like, oh, they have to be perfect, and kids go off all the time. And you know what? It may not be your day today, and maybe another kid's day to tomorrow. But you know what? It's childhood. We all had to go through it.
Yes, Candace. Would love to have you on the show again in the future. Okay, definitely for the next books. And to all the viewers and the listeners, until next time, so booking cool.
Thank you.